And we are the Castros.
We bring you the news.
And the views that make you think.
Sometimes we agree.
Sometimes we don't.
This is News and Views.
And here are today's headlines.
Former President Rodrigo Duterte has submitted an official appeal to the ICC for interim release to an undisclosed country.
House Speaker Martin Romualdez expresses serious concern over the Senate's move to send back the Duterte impeachment articles.
Philippine authorities call on Filipinos in the U.S. to refrain from participating in protests to avoid legal complications.
More than 240 people are confirmed dead after an Air India Boeing 7878 Dreamliner crashed on Thursday.
First in the news, former President Rodrigo Duterte has formally appealed to the International Criminal Court for interim release to an undisclosed country. Duterte's lawyer Nicholas Kaufman said a specific government has expressed advance and principled agreement to receive Duterte during the period of his provisional liberty. According to the filing, the unnamed country has committed to comply with any conditions the ICC may impose. The defense argued that Duterte does not pose a flight risk and is unlikely to continue committing crimes. His legal team cited his age and health as additional humanitarian grounds for his temporary release.
Now let's talk to ICC accredited lawyer attorney Joel Butuyan. Good morning. Thanks for joining us today.
Good morning, Angelo and Angela. Thanks for having me.
Right. So the Duterte camp claim po na may request po sila nga tungkol nga dito sa interim release, and sabi daw po nila may non-opposition ang prosecution. Do we have information regarding this? At tama po ba yun within the bounds of the rule na hindi na lang kakausapin din yung mga nagsampa ng kaso regarding this interim release?
I think mali yung phrasing nila na the prosecution has already agreed to the interim release of the former president. No, the correct phrasing should be the prosecution will agree if certain conditions are met. No, kasi merong mga conditions that the defense has admitted were imposed by the prosecution. Although those conditions are redacted, kumbaga confidential, so they're not available publicly.
Right.
Okay, meron ba tayong attorney precedent before na similar sa case ni former President Duterte, also in the ICC, na pinayagan ang interim release pending an agreement from another country?
Meron ng a few instances when the ICC granted an application or request for interim release. Pero yung alam ko, mga minor offenses lang ang involved, yung tungkol sa violations on interference on the administration of justice, yung mga nakikialam sa mga witnesses, yung mga nagsusuhol, who bribe witnesses or who threaten witnesses, no? And in some of these instances, the country that accepted to host this interimly released accused was Belgium. So ang number one sa suspecha ko, the country who would most probably agree to host Mr. Duterte would be Belgium.
Okay.
No? Because of its history, its past history of accepting interimly released accused. And second, it's very close to the ICC,
yes,
to the ICC seat in The Hague. No? So kung mag-attend ng trial si Mr. Duterte, it's just, I think, even just less than an hour away, no?
Yeah.
Yung Belgium from The Hague.
Can you explain to us, attorney, why was it redacted from the information, the request, yung possible host country nung kanilang request for interim release?
Kasi meron pa rin kasing mga conditions din, no? Yung host country na kailangan mag-agree, at the same time i-impose pa rin sa host country, and I guess commonsensically ayaw nilang magkaroon ng political pressure din, no? And siguro nakikita rin nila, no, yung mga panggugulo ng mga supporters ni President Duterte. Baka mamaya magdagsaan sila bigla doon sa
Right.
Belgium kung umalingaw-ngaw kaagad prematurely yung identity ng host country.
Kasi attorney, madaming legal luminaries or also political analysts na nagsasabi na yung sinasabi ng defense team ni Pangulong former President Duterte na hindi naman siya flight risk. Number two, he does not pose any threat sa witnesses or walang sway over them. Ang sinasabi nila, he's not a sitting president. He might be physically weak. But his daughter daw is also the vice president, and look at what's happening daw sa impeachment court, yung power that they still yield in the Philippines. Yeah. So even though that he may be restricted in movement, meron pa rin siyang connection even as simple as...
And he won, mayor.
Yeah, mayor. And even as simple as a telephone. So ano po ang tugon nyo dito?
Alam mo, tama yun, no? It is really a flight risk, no? Kasi from the very beginning, talagang he didn't recognize the jurisdiction of the ICC. In fact, he withdrew the Philippines from its ICC membership,
Yeah.
And he even threatened ICC officials if they came to the Philippines to investigate. And during his arrest, he even threatened the arresting officer, now General Torres. Sinabi niyang malilintikan ka or something to that effect sa mga anak ko, no? Or magbabayad ka sa mga anak ko. So talagang makikita mo na talagang with his own language, with his own statements, talagang he's going to be a flight risk. He's going, at the first opportunity, he's going to escape, no, from the jurisdiction of the ICC, no? So tingin ko factually hindi talaga magiging entitled si Mr. Duterte based on the fact that he is a flight risk. Hindi siya entitled to an interim release.
Attorney, baka you could help us understand a little, no? Yung request for yung interim release and then whoever yung host country. So does this mean that even if the trial commences already, he will still be under interim release sa country na yon, and every time na he needs to appear lang in a trial, tsaka siya babalik sa The Hague, tapos babalik ulit siya kung whatever facility he will be in another country? Ganun po ba ang setup niyan?
Tama yun, no? Kasi kailangan siya mag-appear sa trial, no? Unless talagang merong physical inability, pero kailangan talaga siya mag-attend sa trial. So kailangan talaga yung bansa na mag-host sa kanya in his interim release should be accessible sa The Hague.
I remember, attorney, in one of your interviews, you stated also that age was never a factor in ICC because most of the ICC suspects are of the same age as Duterte. You also mentioned that Duterte cannot bring up the health reasons because may mga medical facilities, able medical facilities ang The Hague na po pwedeng gampanan yung kanilang tungkulin kung may mga problema medically itong si former President Digo Duterte. But where do you think is the defense coming from? Yung lakas po ng loob nila saying na most likely ay magagrant yung interim release nila.
Ang problema kasi natin, Angela, dito sa kanilang application, heavily redacted yung issue ng other than yung 80 years old siya, meron silang sinasabi na redacted, no, na reason. So most probably, I would suppose this would be a medical reason or a health reason, no? Although hindi natin alam kung gaano ka seryoso yung reason na yon. Pero kung babalikan natin yung pag-aresto kay Mr. Duterte, he just came from Hong Kong where he spoke before several rallies, no? Yeah. So he was able to travel. He was able to speak, no? For ang report is more than an hour, no? And when he was examined by doctors before he was shipped out to The Hague, wala naman siyang problema, no? So right. And that was only March. That was only about 3 months ago. So kung pagbabasehan natin yung kanyang medical history, mukhang kung yung pagiging 80 years old na lang, it's not going to be a sufficient reason.
Okay, Attorney, what can we expect now to happen between now and September with regards to itong nangyayari po kay Pangulong Duterte? Because a lot of people are waiting for updates.
Well, unang-una yung issue ng jurisdiction kasi china-challenge ng defense yung jurisdiction ng ICC. At naghain na ng kumbaga parang opposition prosecutor at pati na rin yung tumatayong Victims Council. Submitted na yan noong June 9, no, yung opposition, yung observations, yung comments ng kabilang parties, at didesisyonan yan ng pre-trial chamber, and I suspect before the September hearings on the confirmation of charges. Pangalawa, dito sa may request for interim release, nag-file pa lang ang defense ng application. Right. So, bibigyan ng tsansa yung prosecutor, saka yung Victims Council to submit their positions on this issue. And then, saka pa lang magdedesisyon yung pre-trial chamber. Right. So, yun yung mga expect natin before the September confirmation of charges.
At least we're clear on that kasi sinasabi ng defense, non-opposition daw ang prosecution sa kanilang request for interim release. Alright, maraming salamat po sa inyong oras. Thank you for your insights and time, Attorney Joel Butuyan. Thank you so much.
Senate President Chis Escudero called on the House of Representatives to respect the impeachment court's orders. This comes following concerns raised by House Speaker Martin Romualdez over the Senate's move to return the articles of impeachment against Vice President Sara Duterte. Here's the report.
House Speaker Martin Romualdez says the Senate's decision to return the Duterte articles of impeachment to the lower house is deeply concerning. In his speech right before the House adjourned its third regular session, Romualdez defended his chamber, saying the impeachment proceedings followed the law. Still, he vowed to comply with the requirements of the impeachment court.
These articles were transmitted by the chamber in accordance with the Constitution and with the overwhelming support of 215 members who answered the people's call for accountability. The House of Representatives acted not out of haste, but with deliberate care. We followed the law, we honored our mandate, and above all, we stood for what the Filipino people deserve.
Just before the House adjourned, a resolution certifying that Duterte's impeachment did not violate the Constitution was approved. But the chamber also approved a motion deferring the acceptance of the remanded articles of impeachment until the Senate provides clarification, particularly on the second condition it set. The upper chamber wants the House of the 20th Congress to express willingness to push through with Vice President Duterte's trial. Meanwhile, Senate President Chis Escudero maintained that the lower house should follow the orders of the Senate as an impeachment court. Escudero likewise said that Vice President Sara Duterte should do the same with regards to the summons issued to her.
Pero dalawa ang kautusan ng impeachment court. Hindi lamang yung attestation ng pagtupad doon sa certification sa pagtupad sa one-year ban na provision ng Constitution, pero pati yung attestation na interesado pa rin sila sa pagbubukas ng bagong Kongreso na ipursige ang kaso dahil nga doon pa lamang magsisimula ang paglilitis. Nampa siya ng impeachment court bilang mga taga-usig, dapat nilang galangin at sundin yun. Papareho din sa parte ni VP Sara, dapat galangin at sundin din niya yung summons na inisu ng impeachment court.
For News 5, I'm Marian Enriquez. We are One News.
Senator Win Gatchalian emphasized the importance of maintaining public trust in the impeachment process following the Senate's decision to return the complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte to the House of Representatives. Gatchalian noted that the Constitution clearly states that once an impeachment complaint is transmitted to the Senate, it must be tried by the chamber acting as an impeachment court. He described the move to remand the complaint as unique and expressed concern about its impact on the process's integrity. The senator also admitted he was surprised by the 18-5 vote in favor of the motion.
The House of Representatives is holding the Senate responsible for the failure to pass the proposed 200 peso wage hike bill before the 19th Congress adjourned. House spokesperson Attorney Princess Abante explained that the lower chamber had prepared for bicameral negotiations and was open to compromise. However, she said the Senate's refusal to engage ultimately stalled the process and left the proposal unresolved.
The Senate killed the 200 peso wage hike bill. Ayaw ng Senado makipag-usap.
Ang gusto nila, tanggapin na lang ng tao ang 100 pesos nila. Bakit? Bakit binabarya ng Senado ang mga manggagawa? We were ready to deliberate. We came in good faith. But what the Senate gave us was a take it or leave it ultimatum. Wala silang balak makipag-usap. Ang gusto nila, susunod lang kami sa gusto nila.
Now, let's discuss that further with Attorney Sonny Matula, President of the Federation of Free Workers.
Attorney Matula is also the chairman of the Nagkaisa Labor Coalition. Attorney, thank you for joining us.
Ay, maraming salamat, Angelo at Angela. Magandang araw po sa ating mga kababayan sa Pilipinas.
Attorney, first and foremost, naniniwala po ba kayo na ang Senado ay pinatay o killed the 200 wage hike bill, tulad po ng sinasabi ng House of Representatives?
Sa palagay ko po ay nagtuturuan na itong mga kongresista at mga senador natin. Sa palagay ko ay yung Senado naman ay matagal na itong ipinasa na batas, na bill. Itong House of Representatives ay dinribol. Kaya po hindi lamang po Senado siguro ang may kasalanan, hindi lang itong last day. Ay yung dalawang kapulungan po ay palagay ko unwilling na ipasa talaga yung ating panukala. At ang isa pa siguro na nakapagpahinto sa ating proposal na pagtaas ng sahod ay yung ating Malacanang, sapagkat isa last day na po ay nagpapalabas din ng pagharang, manifestasyon ng pagharang ang Malacanang. Kaya po hindi lamang siguro ang Senado, ang House, ay pati na po ang Malacanang ay may kasalanan din bakit hindi naipasa ang ating panukalang 200 pesos o 100 pesos na wage hike nationwide.
We all know, Attorney, sa 20th Congress, baka, the word pa nga baka is i-refile ulit to. Dadaan na naman to sa proseso. In the meantime po, ano po ang tugon po ng inyong grupo? Ano po ang gagawin ninyong grupo with regards to an appeal para taasan ng sweldo?
Sa National Wage Coalition, marami kasi kami mga kasama. So, nandyan yung Trade Union Congress of the Philippines, nandiyan yung Nagkaisa Labor Coalition kung saan nakasama ang Federation of Free Workers, nandiyan po ang Buklurang Manggagawang Pilipino, nandiyan ang Kilusang Mayo Uno. Kaya magkaroon po tayo ng assessment kung saan tayo at least nagkamali o saan nahirapan tayo. At siyempre, maliban sa assessment, may mga kasama tayo kahapon na nagpakita na ng kanilang protesta at ng kanilang frustration sa araw ng kalayaan, sapagkat kung walang pera o kapos sa pera ang mga manggagawa, sa palagay ko ay hindi malaya kung nakabaon tayo sa utang, nakabaon tayo sa kagutuman, nakabaon tayo sa kahirapan. So mag-a-assist po tayo, pero marami naman tayong mga opsyon na pwedeng ma-adapt. Katulad halimbawa na i-refile ito ulit sa 20th Congress. May mga option din tayo na magamit, katulad ng sa yung ating pag-organisa para makapag-collective bargaining negotiation tayo sa ating mga employer. At siyempre, maaari pa rin natin gamitin yung Regional Tripartite Wages and Productivity Board, pero palagay natin ang priority natin ay national legislation ulit.
Oo. Pero balikan ko po, Attorney, yung naging pahayag po ninyo kanina na sabi nyo po hindi lamang House of Representatives at saka ang Senate ang maaaring may kasalanan kung bakit hindi po maipasa-ipasa itong bill na to para po sa ating mga manggagawa. Ano po ba ang inyong basehan doon po sa sinabi nyo na meron din po kinalaman ang Malacanang dito?
Yung isa yung pinalabas na last minute na pagharang ng Malacanang, katulad ng binigay na assessment ng ating mga economic managers. Ito po ay parang pahabol na lamang. 2 taon na po yung deliberasyon ng ating bill proposal. Pero last minute, nung naipasa na ng Senado last year, naipasa ng House last 2 minutes, na nitong Hunyo, ay nagpahabol pa sila ng assessment na mayroon ng inflationary, hindi ito nakakanda sa ating ekonomiya. Ba't ngayon pa nila ibinigay? Hindi nila isinumiti dito sa House at sa Senado, no? Nagde-deliberate pa ang ating dalawang kapulungan. Kaya palagay ko talaga ay very detached yung ating mga Malacanang officials at gusto nila talagang harangin itong pagtaas sahod ng ating mga manggagawa na 36 years lang naghihintay na walang taas sahod at bumababa at bumabagsak yung purchasing power ng ating mga manggagawa na dumulot ng kahirapan, ng malnutrition sa mga kabataan at siyempre ay baon sa utang, nakasangla ang ATM ng ating mga manggagawa.
Pero attorney, follow up ko lang to kay attorney. Having said that po ba, ibig po bang sabihin you can categorically say na mas pinakikinggan ng gobyernong ito ang mga business sector, kumbaga aside from the labor group?
Oo, ang aming nakakiling talaga yung ating Senado, yung House, kasama na ang Malacanang sa interest ng mga kapitalista at mga employees natin at hindi po nila napakinggan at very detached sila sa realidad sa buhay ng mga manggagawa na nangangailangan na talaga ng dagdag sahod. May crisis na tayo sa sahod, namamatay 99 children ay namamatay every day, sabi ng UNICEF, malnourished, stunted yung ating mga anak. At ano na ang kinabukasan ng ating bansa kung ganito ang sitwasyon na kapus at kulang na kulang ang buhay ng pamilyang Pilipino.
Attorney, did Malacanang, the Senate or the House attempt to, or kayo man lang, anyone from your group, attempt to have a dialogue with each other? Mas lalo na nung nalalapit yung pag-e-end o pag-sinidiyan ng lower house regarding this. May attempt ba to talk this out?
May mga proposal kami, mga 10 sulat na atang request natin sa Malacanang na magkaroon sana ng dialogo ang leader obrero at si Pangulong Marcos. Pero yung mga last minute, nagkaroon ng dialogue ata kay Presidente yung Trade Union Congress of the Philippines pero hindi po sa broad na representasyon ng kilusang paggawa.
Okay.
Okay, so sa tingin niyo po ba, attorney, sa darating na 20th Congress, yung bagong komposisyon ng both the Senate and the House of Representatives, magkakaroon po ng kumbaga pagbabago yung kanilang pag-iisip at maaaring maipasa finally itong mga proposed bill na to? At magkano po kaya nakikita niyo po on that sense?
Titingnan natin nga, sabi namin, i-assist natin ulit kung magkano na at kung saan tayo nagkamali dahil hindi po natapos itong ating proposal. Pero positibo naman ang kilusang paggawa at hindi po tayo natitinag at hindi nahahapo na isusulong natin na makamit yung nakabubuhay na sahod. Itong 200 pesos, yung 100 pesos ay mga hakbang lamang para sa ating kilos na matupad yung kinakailangan talaga ng mga Pilipino ng family living wage na isang mandato ng ating konstitusyon at kinakailangan ng manggagawang Pilipino.
Well, attorney, alam naman natin yung 200 or 100 pesos, medyo if you're to compute it, yung to a decent living, medyo kulang nga talaga yan. But in the meantime, what amount is your group willing to work on para maipasa na at least are you willing to work on halfway, sabihin natin 150, between 100 and 200 para magkasundo ang upper and lower house?
Yung last day or second to the last day ay nag-usap na kami at kung very difficult talaga na ipasa yung bill na ito ay nag-suggest na kami sa House of Representatives na siguro pwede na natin tanggapin yung 100 pesos kasi sinuportahan naman yan ng trade union movement nang naipasa. Pero ang nangyari ata ay nagmatigasan yung House at nasiro tuloy ang mga manggagawang Pilipino.
Sorry, I'll clarify. So you were willing already, kasi parang ang dating ng Senado unwilling daw to budge ang lower house na bumaba ng 200. Ang sinasabi naman ng lower house, ayaw naman nila makipag-usap Parang ang hirap po i-pinpoint saan po talaga nanggaling ang bottleneck.
Palagay ko ay yung intensyon sa deliberasyon ay makikita natin na parang pinaglaruan lang itong ng dalawang kapulungan sapagkat sana naman yung Senado ay bumigay na magkaroon man lang ng meeting. Pero kami nga po dahil very practical tayo, dahil naipasa na yung 100 pesos within the range naman ng ating sinusuportahang mga bills, kaya po nagsuggest na kami kay TUCP Congressman Raymond Mendoza at sinabi naman ni Congressman Mendoza sa panel ng House na willing na ang trade unions na tanggapin yung 100 pesos sapagkat yun naman po ay sinuportahan natin nung may pasa ito. So yung TUCP, yung Bukloran Manggagawang Pilipino, yung Kilusang Mayo 1 at ang Nagkaisa Labor Coalition ay willing na sana na tanggapin yung 100 pesos. Pero naabutan na ng oras de peligro at natapos na nga yung oras, kaya po ay naiwan ang mga manggagawa sa usaping ito.
Lastly, Attorney, kunin ko na lang din po ulit yung pahayag po ninyo doon po sa sinasabi, of course, ng mga business, sa hanay po ng business sector na kapag po tumaas po muli ang sahod po ng mga manggagawa, maapektuhan po yung, of course, yung services nila, yung production cost, operation cost, at maaaring magtanggal ng mga iba pang manggagawa. Yun daw po yung maaaring maging reaksyon, o impact nitong pagtaas ng sweldo.
Palagay ko na may epekto talaga yon, pero hindi naman ganun ka-significant na magsasara sila. Kung alam nyo, kung ating natatandaan na kasamang Angela, noong 1989 ay 64 pesos yung national minimum wage at mayroong bill na dinagdagan ito ng 25 pesos, naging 89 pesos. That is about 40% increase. Yung proposal natin na 100 pesos sa kasalukuyan, that is only about 15%. Yung 200, about 31%. So mas mababa yan. Noong 1989, wala namang malawakang sarahan o tanggalan ng mga manggagawa na almost 40% ang taas sahod. May mga kudita pa during the time. Ngayon, stable, may savings yung ating mga kompanya. Sa Create, mayroong 35%, binaba sa 25%, yung mga maliliit 20%. Tumataas yung ating ekonomiya. Yung sahod ng mga manggagawa ay poverty level maliban sa Metro Manila. No? Yung 89 pesos noong 1989 is only about 626 pesos. Yung sa bar, 361 pesos, almost one half ang nawala. No? Kaya palagay ko ay dapat itaas man lang sa mas mataas sa poverty wage. Kung mayroong 200 pesos sana, ay lahat ng mga wage board, wage earner natin sa Pilipinas ay sana makaangat doon sa poverty level. Kaya palagay ko ay walang katotohanan na magsara sila, na may kapasidad naman sila at dapat i-share nila sa manggagawang Pilipinos na bumababa yung purchasing power.
Alright, maraming salamat po sa inyong oras. That was Labor Leader Attorney Sonny Matuda.
Mabuhay po kayo, Angela at Angela.
We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. Good morning. You're still watching News and Views here on One News. The Foreign Affairs Department is advising Filipinos in the U.S. to refrain from participating in immigration-related demonstrations to avoid potential legal complications. Here's a report.
U.S. Marines are set to join National Guard troops on the streets of Los Angeles to suppress immigration-related protests and escalating violence. According to the U.S. Northern Command, the Marines have completed their training and will be deployed by Friday. Similar to the National Guard units deployed by President Donald Trump, these Marines will be authorized to detain individuals who interfere with federal immigration officers during enforcement operations. Local law enforcement has already begun making mass arrests of demonstrators in violation of the emergency curfew, which runs from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. LA time. President Donald Trump explained that the deployment of troops is aimed at liberating Los Angeles from the violence of protesters.
Within the span of a few decades, Los Angeles has gone from being one of the cleanest, safest, and most beautiful cities on earth to being a trash heap with entire neighborhoods under the control of transnational gangs and criminal networks. It's horrible what's happened so quickly. As the entire world can now see, uncontrolled migration leads to chaos, dysfunction, and disorder.
However, many residents have expressed opposition to the military presence, saying they do not welcome the intervention. The unrest is not limited to Los Angeles. Protests have also erupted in several other major U.S. cities, including Washington, D.C., New York City, Seattle, Chicago, and Las Vegas. Meanwhile, Department of Foreign Affairs Assistant Secretary for Migrant Workers Affairs Robert Ferrer Jr. reported that no Filipinos have been arrested in connection with the recent protests in Los Angeles.
I have updates from our Consul General in Los Angeles, Adelio Cruz. He said no Filipino or Filipino-American, for that matter, has been arrested or detained from the ongoing protest.
Ferrer also advised Filipinos in the United States to refrain from participating in immigration-related demonstrations to avoid potential legal complications.
Let's talk more about that report we have with us.
Yeah, Gabriel Young, Northern California President of the National Federation of Filipino-American Association. Hi, Gabriel. Thanks for joining us again.
Kumusta po? Thank you so much for having me. Happy to always be here.
Well, Gabriel, all we have right now are videos on social media as to what's happening. It seems like something of a movie, but maybe you can paint us a clearer picture of what it's like or what's happening right now.
Yes, no, absolutely. And this is very personal for me because my own brother goes to university over in Los Angeles. And just yesterday, it was his birthday. And so my mom, who lives here in the Bay Area, wanting to make sure that my brother is safe, made sure to go down to Southern California and get my brother out of the downtown Los Angeles area out of fear that he might be in danger or of the traffic or the riots that might be caused or the violence that's ensuing. And so I will note, though, despite all that we see on social media, there's also the different picture on the ground where a majority of demonstrators are peaceful. We just had a demonstration here in San Francisco, California, and then for me, I work in Sacramento, California, where we also saw demonstrations as well. And all these demonstrations remind me again of EDSA back then in 1986, where we saw peaceful protesting, but when you have the few bad apples that decide to make it violent, that's when the news begins to capitalize, and that's when fear then begins mongering in our own community. So I believe that the media paints one picture, but those on the ground, especially my own friends at the Filipino Workers Center down in Los Angeles, also are telling me that it's mostly peaceful compared to what we see on the news.
Right. I was wondering if you have a comment on the issue of what could be the economic impact of such arrests that they have been doing, knowing that LA's fashion sector relies heavily on immigrant labor, and there are reported disruptions such as absenteeism, stalled production, and financial damage.
Yes, no, absolutely. So immigrants, in my opinion, are the backbone of our economy. Ever since the Bracero program that we saw with President Bill Clinton bringing over undocumented Mexicans into the United States, and of course with NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, really solidifying that. So undocumented immigrants are the backbone of the U.S. economy. And so when you remove all the laborers from the United States, especially here in California, we're the fourth largest economy, and our huge sectors are mostly in agriculture, where undocumented immigrants are the ones picking the berries and the vegetables the entire world eats. We're going to see massive economic repercussions. We're already seeing economists come out and say that with the tariffs that have already been imposed, that we're going to see an economic downturn. But when you remove the labor force, then having to actually pay folks a much higher wage, especially those who are documented here in the United States, then we're going to see economic slowdown. Additionally, there is this narrative out there that undocumented immigrants are just stealing resources from the United States, but on the economic perspective, undocumented immigrants pay almost over $1 billion into taxes in the United States using what is called an individual tax identification number, also known as ITIN. And so not only will all businesses in the private sector start slowing down with their laborers being retracted, but also on the government side too, that we're going to see countries doing less with us because we can't get products out, but also less government revenue coming in because of these undocumented immigrants being pushed out of the country.
Yes, Gabriel, let's take this discussion a little back to the flashpoint, to what triggered all of these protests. We've all heard the pronouncements of California Governor Newsom. We know that the ICE had the initial quota, but what sparked the actual protest? And I'd like to ask, since we have a different instructor, our kababayans here asking, what is the governor's function right now at this moment for California?
Absolutely. So one thing that's very important to know about the United States governance is we operate on the system called federalism, where each state has their own governor. Think about it in the sense of if Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao each had their own governor, that they don't necessarily legislate, but they're just in charge of their regions. And so with that, states have certain rights that are protected under our Bill of Rights, especially under the 10th Amendment, which says that any law that is not stated in the United States Constitution, that is created by state legislatures or governors, those states have the power to either create their own laws or enforce their own laws. And so, particularly with Governor Newsom, the big issue that's coming up here is an issue of states' rights, that each state is also allowed its own militia, its own military. And in this case, what we see in the news, the National Guard. And so California has its own National Guard, Texas has its own National Guard. And there's a certain law in the United States Code that says that a president of the United States can bypass the governor's control, or just as we hear, like commander-in-chief of sorts of the National Guard, if there is a emergency such as a war. However, there is no war going on right now. And so what is going on and sparking this entire debate of sending troops down to Los Angeles, despite Mayor Karen Bass not even asking for troops, Governor Newsom not asking for the federal military to be moved in either, is the Governor Newsom's own power being bypassed almost illegally. And so now it becomes a question of the rule of law, that if our own country cannot uphold its own laws because our own sitting president is bypassing them, who else is to say that the lawlessness that will occur? And one thing I'd really like to emphasize is our own Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, is even on the record of not even knowing the law of habeas corpus, which states that you can't arrest someone in times of war as well. And so when our own leaders don't even know the law and start to ignore judicial rulings, then it becomes really scary. Just today, we saw a own California senator being arrested just because he asked a simple question within a press briefing. And we have respect for our senators here in the United States. Him walking in, he should have been given the time, but instead he gets detained by our own federal law enforcement, which, as everyone is saying, even our own governor, is worrying signs of fascism. And so Governor Newsom is just calling all states, all Americans, to be aware of what could happen when the president decides to overlook the checks and balances that make our government what it is.
Gabriel, I'd just like to clarify something. Supposedly the federal government, or ICE, is supposed to conduct these deportations based on a vetted list, supposedly, that they already have. But I've heard reports that they are not following the list anymore given the quota, and what they are doing is randomly picking up people who they think, based on the skin color of their skin or ethnicity, and then that's the only time they will verify the identity. Is that what is happening?
Even those who don't have criminal records.
Yes, no, you are absolutely correct. And what we're calling it here in the United States is an overlooking of due process. So due process is defined that each citizen, and also anyone who's undocumented here in the United States, is allowed the rights that are conferred by our own Constitution, and, if you will, the process of governance. And so with that, when ICE is bypassing the rule of law that they must show their warrants whenever they're picking someone up, that they must go through and make sure that they're only arresting folks who are undocumented. They are arresting citizens and permanent residents and even those on green cards. And so here in the nonprofit sector, especially of NAFA, we are really emphasizing the message of know your rights, especially as immigrants. Make sure you have your red cards, which list all your rights, but also that even if you are a citizen, know that they aren't just coming for undocumented immigrants. They're coming for anyone that they can racially profile and easily
and reach the
detain.
quotas.
Yes, one specific example that I really love to give, especially here in the National Federation of Filipino American Associations, Northern California, we work very closely with the San Francisco Philippine Consulate and DFA, and we were very supportive of their process to get Maximo Londino out from the illegal detainment that ICE has also put them through. Our own kababayan, who was detained in the Seattle-Tacoma airport, who had all their papers, but was unfortunately racially profiled. So whatever's happening to the Latino community is also happening to us Filipinos. So it's not just specific of what's going on to LA and the fear that's being stoked amongst Latinos who are being racially profiled, but even us Filipinos. Look, even our last names are similar. Like we have our De La Rosas, we have our De La Cruzes,
Right.
and so it's a real fear that us Filipinos will also get racially profiled and also incriminated
But
too.
it looks like, Gabriel, it's going to go past state issues. It's going to go federal. Given the fact that the Marines, I heard, are now empowered to detain based on how they on what they think is constitutes somebody who is going against the order of ICE. It's very vague, but what is your take on that?
It is for us, in coalition with all of our other Filipino-American nonprofits. We're in a policy coalition called the Fierce Coalition, the Filipinx Igniting and Engaging Collective Empowerment. We're getting almost collective trauma, again, of what happened in the 80s under President Ferdinand Marcos. And many of our families and immigrants who have escaped with sort of the extrajudicial, not just killings, but also the disappearances of families and friends. And so what we're seeing with the military coming in is almost reminiscent of that. And so all of us seeing the Marines coming in, it's stoking a real fear where there doesn't have to be fear, where we can go through the judicial process. We can talk to each other as elected officials, and especially as Governor Newsom is putting it, really be that fourth branch of government, having the role of a citizen within government to stand up when we see oppression and fascism starting to rise up. It's not even about trying to be a strongman and maintaining quote-unquote control of the country, but it's about validating the humanity and giving humane practices to all. A 4-year-old girl was detained for all we can say. And so one thing that I do want to leave us off with is we're very lucky here in California, let alone the Northern California region, where our own Kuya, who was in community, Attorney General Rob Bonta, actually was able to get a court order to pause the National Guard being activated under President Trump alongside Governor Newsom. And so California is really being an example, I would say, to what democratic resistance and let alone peaceful resistance following the role of court of law and rule of law to show what the rest of the country should be doing as well and pushing back when there is large presidential overreach. So again, if there's one thing that I can say is just we have to continue being peaceful, we have to keep working with each other, and we need to keep understanding what it means to be Filipino, having that spirit of resilience to push back when oppression and fascism is rising up against us.
Very well said. We will continue to get in touch with you regarding this issue. For the meantime, thank you so much for your time. Gabriel Young, Northern California President of the National Federation of Filipino American Associations. Thank you so much.
Maraming salamat po. Have a good one.
More than 240 people are confirmed dead after an Air India Boeing 7878 Dreamliner crashed just moments after takeoff from Ahmedabad, India on Thursday. The aircraft flight AI-171 was en route to London's Gatwick Airport when it plummeted into a doctor's hostel at a nearby medical college. The aircraft was carrying 242 people, including 11 children and 2 infants. Only one passenger is confirmed to have survived. The incident marks the first fatal crash involving a Dreamliner since the model entered service in 2011. Officials are still working to identify victims, including those killed on the ground.
Now, let's get the latest from our weather. For today, we have weather specialist Lori De La Cruz joining us today. Lori? Lori, are you there?
Yes, hello.
Yun, okay. So, can you tell us about our weather for today? Yung nakikita pa ba nating LPA ay magtutuloy-tuloy pa rin ba ito makaka-apekto sa ating bansa?
So far, based po sa ating latest, yung LPA po is papalayo na po siya na ating area of responsibility. Outside of the PAR na po siya as of 3 a.m. kanina, and it's not causing direct effect anymore sa most parts of the country maliban doon sa Batanes. So we're seeing na in the coming days ay wala na po ito magiging epekto sa atin.
Alright.
So is it saying na gaganda ang weather outlook natin over the weekend?
Yes, over the weekend, almost whole of the country will experience an improved weather. Maliban po sa mga isolated thunderstorms in the afternoon.
Do we see other weather systems outside the Philippine area of responsibility?
So far, ngayon, wala po tayong ibang namomonitor na weather disturbance inside the Philippine area of responsibility. We're also not expecting at least in the next 2 days. Pero mag-monitor na lang din po sa magiging updates pa rin ng Pag-asa.
I'd like to ask lang na itong nararamdaman natin, cooler temperatures this last 2 days, is it related to yung nangyayaring weather system na nararanasan natin ngayon sa labas ng area of responsibility?
Ito pong paglamig ng panahon is directly linked po ito sa pag-epekto o pag-prevail ng southwest monsoon o habagat in the country over the last few days. Kasama na rin dyan yung low pressure area that enhanced southwest monsoon. Definitely meron po sila naging factor po sila o naka-contribute po sila.
Alright, maraming salamat po sa inyong update. That was weather specialist Lori De La Cruz.
Don't go away because we're not done yet. Please stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching News and Views here on One News.
MPIC Digital Healthcare arm MWell carried out its Independence Day mission in the remote area of Talim Island in Rizal. The details in this report by Mobile Journal, Merimon Reyes.
MWell, in partnership with the Philippine Coast Guard, healthcare workforces, organizations, and sponsors such as Huawei, traveled yesterday to Barangay Navotas, Talim Island, Rizal to deliver quality health and medical services, as well as health literacy to its residents. The goal for the Independence Day medical mission, ensuring nobody gets left behind when it comes to wellness.
Ang talaga pong gustong gawin ng MWell ay alagaan ang bawat Pilipino. Doesn't matter kung nasa syudad kayo or nasa isla.
Throughout the medical mission, consultations, general checkups, and laboratory tests were made like urinalysis and ECG, as well as dental, optometric, and veterinary services. Patients were also given reading glasses, eye drops, and medicines for free.
Nakakatulong po sa mga tao, lalo sa mga hayop. At talagang napakahirap dahil hanggat magdala ka sa hangin, wala kang sa bangka, kailangan punta ka pang bayan.
Yung pinalaki ko mga anak, mga sobrang hikain. Bago ka makapunta ng Binangonan, talagang yung baby mo talagang wala na siya bago mo pa siya mapa-hospital. So maraming salamat po.
Awa po ng Diyos ay naka-ano po sa salamin. Nakakakita po, nakakabasa.
MWell also gave the barangay's health workers its on-the-go bag or clinic in a bag, which contains a triage kit complete with a digital thermometer, oximeter, and blood pressure monitor. There's also a pocket Wi-Fi and a tablet from Huawei equipped with the MWell app and health passes for its constituents. For the continuing care to Talim Island residents, even after the medical mission concludes, the MWell teleconsultation platform was also introduced, wherein with the use of the MWell app, residents may be able to set an appointment and speak with a doctor online anytime, anywhere. This could be done through video or audio call.
sa pamamagitan ng technology, maibahagi na po natin ito. Sa isla man tayo, sa bundok, ma-access na po natin ang mga doktor. Tandaan po natin ay ang kalusugan ang ating puhunan.
MWell plans to set more medical missions across regions, especially those in far-fetched areas in the Philippines. Mobile journalist Marymon Reyes, we are One News.
The Senate has ratified the bicameral conference committee report seeking to extend the term of barangay and sangguniang kabataan officials. The extension of term of office based on the report for barangay and SK officials is from 3 to 4 years. The BICAM report states that barangay officials will have a maximum of 3 terms in the same position, while SK officials will only have 1 term, if approved by President Marcos. This will postpone the 2025 BSK elections from December 2025 to the first Monday of November in 2026.
Nakatakda na susunod na regular barangay and SK elections ay sa unang Lunes ng Nobyembre 2026 and every 4 years thereafter.
Sa mga batang 80s, naalala nyo pa ba ang larong Hay Alay? Halos wala na rin po tayong naririnig tungkol dyan. Ngayon po, pero alam nyo po ba, meron pa rin tayong Philippine team dyan. Para bigyan ng mukha ang balita, Mobile Journal, Ivan Tarinque.
Basketball, volleyball, ilan yan sa mga nauusang sports ngayon. Pero, naaalala niyo pa ba ang Hay Alay? Mula pa sa Espanya ang sport na Hay Alay. Simple lang ang mechanics. Pagkatapos ihagis ang bola, dapat itong masalo at may balik ng kalaban bago tumalbog ng 2 beses sa lupa. Kapag nabigo, o di kaya'y mali ang serve, hindi nasalo, matagal masyadong nahawakan o lumabas sa court ang bola, puntos ang kalaban. Ang bolang pinag-usapan natin dito, hindi basta-basta, para siyang bato. Pag tinamaan ka, aaray ka talaga. Kaya dapat nakaprotekta ang buong katawan sa paglalaro.
So this is not like a joke sports. This is like a little very dangerous din. Pwede ko masabing very dangerous.
Binansagan nga itong fastest sport in the world dahil umaabot sa higit 300 km per hour ang bola sa ere. Parang kotse na nasa expressway. Kaya kailangan na talagang malakas, flexible at malakidlat ang bilis ng malalaro. Sumikat ang Hay Alay sa Pilipinas noong 1930s. Pero alam nyo ba hanggang ngayon, may mga dedikadong malalaro pa rin tayo na lumahok pa kamakailan sa Hay Alay Basket Pelota Nation League sa Spain.
So kahit na hindi kami nanalo, ang chine-cheer nila is Pilipinas. Tuwan-tuwa kami kasi, biruin mo yung Basque people, meron silang flag ng Pilipinas kasi natuwa sila sa amin.
Pero aminado silang halos dead sport na ang Hay Alay ngayon. Wala nang 100 na active players ngayon sa Metro Manila at isang court na lang ang natitirang pinaglalaroan nito.
Yung Hay Alay ngayon is like, wala nang nagra-run as professional, all amateur na lang.
Sa kabila niyan, hindi pa rin nawawala ng pag-asa ang mga natitirang manlalaro ng Hay Alay na muling mabubuhay ang naturang sport. Mobile Journal, Ivan Tarinque po, hatid ang mukha ng balita.
Alas Pilipinas men's pulled off a thrilling 5-set victory over Thailand, 21-25, 25-21, 25-22, 21-25, 15-12, to complete a sweep of the invitationals on Thursday at the Smart Araneta Coliseum. Espejo powered the team with 31 points, including 6 aces, while Louis Ramirez and Steven Rotter added 15 and 13 respectively. Thailand's Amorntep Konhan led his side with 25 points, while Chaiwat Tungkham and Kisada Nilsawai chipped in 17 and 13. Before facing Thailand, Alas Pilipinas men's defeated Jakarta Bayangkara, Presisi and Hyundai Capital Skywalkers as tune-up matches for the FIVB Volleyball Men's World Championship, which the Philippines will host in September. Dumugo. Teka lang. May dugo ba? Tiny impination yung mga ano yan. Kala ko dumudugo. Anyway, this was a very politically charged week and very tiring. Pero at the end of the day...
Kala ko this is politically charged.
At the end of the day, at the end of the week, ito ang
Buddha's Belly.
Konting luho natin, Buddha's Belly. May siopaw.
Thank you so much, Marjoritan.
Marjoritan, may siopaw, may pansit canton, may...
Our all-time favorite, Hakao. Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
Yeah. Happy Father's Day sa lahat ng mga fathers out there.
Oo. Alright, that wraps up today's episode of News and Views.
Batang 90s ka, 80s ka, di ba?
75. So, teenager ako nung 80s. Pero ang tag sa amin...
Batang 70s ka pala.
Hindi. Ang tag sa amin, batang 90s dahil yung show namin. Adult na ako noon.
Okay.
Pero kung pinag-uusapan yung mga laro, I remember High Alay.
Ako, I don't. Join us again on Monday. I'm Angela Lagunsad Castro.
And I'm Angelo Castro, the Third We Are One News.
All sides, all the time.